right. If we are ready, we will call the May 21st County Board meeting to order, and we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do we have any disclosures of interest? If none, we will review and approve the previous board meeting minutes.
Move approval, Anderson.
We have a motion and a second.
I have one question. On the front page, number 4, it says moved by Commissioner Ruggiero, seconded by Commissioner, and it doesn't list a name. And I don't know if that matters, but it's not listing who made the second.
I'll look and make sure I did it on there.
All right, so you know what I'm talking
Yep,
about?
yep.
Okay.
I seconded the opening of the public hearing.
All in favor of the approving the minutes?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and approve the county board agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We're going to review and approve the following items on the consent agenda.
Move approval as presented, Anderson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Get to the regular agenda, county surveyor's report.
First item is oath of office. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Due to the upcoming vacancy, the board needs to appoint an interim county surveyor and interim county recorder in order to represent and sign documents for the county as a Minnesota licensed surveyor and record. Due to the upcoming vacancy, the board needs to appoint an interim county surveyor and interim county recorder in order to represent and sign documents for the county as a Minnesota licensed surveyor and record documents in the recorder's office. Jeffrey Ekblad has been employed in the county surveyor's office since 2000. He's a licensed surveyor, and he's been my deputy since 2009. He's professionally qualified to assume the interim duties as county surveyor and county recorder on June 1st, 2024. Mr. Ekblad is eligible for out-of-class pay as per the county policy until the positions are permanently filled. Both requires oaths of office, and we've provided you the oath of office if the chair would like to administer that.
Yes. Do we stand for that, or?
Do
on
do
up
we
there.
need to officially appoint?
What's that?
Do we need to officially appoint as a board to those two positions? Or the oath will do that?
Yeah, you can make that motion, but then this is the oath of office.
Right.
Surveyor first? Okay, repeat after me. I, Jeffrey Ekblad. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear
Of America, I missed that one. And Minnesota.
in Minnesota
That I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
I will faithfully, partially discharge the duties
of the office of County Surveyor for Goodhue County,
of the office of County Surveyor for Goodhue
Minnesota,
County, Minnesota,
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment.
Got one more.
Thank you.
The other one.
You got one more.
All right, raise your right hand. I, Jeffrey Ekblad, do solemnly swear
I, Jeffrey Ekblad, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
that I will support the Constitution
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
I will faithfully and partially discharge the duties
of the office of the County Recorder for County of Goodhue,
of the office of
State of Minnesota,
the State of Minnesota,
to which I have been appointed,
to which I have been appointed,
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, continuation of service, we can record documents after June 1st. Thank you.
You.
Let me go to the next item, Commissioner? Okay. So the next item is document recording software. I gave you a little history, and just as with anything else that we have as far as how we've kept records over the years, handwritten documents, typed in books, stored on microfiche, and then scanned images starting November 7th of 2000 to current. We started looking at this. We've looked over the years at different softwares. We were kind of committed to this one company, and then this year we ended up getting a new quote for imaging. So right now we use one software to do the recording, and we do one software to do the imaging. We got the new quote for the imaging, and it was doubled what we were paying for maintenance fees, and that's why we started looking again. So recorder staff and IT reviewed the product features for both our current solution and a new Record Ease software. And we looked at the product features, accessibility, and the costs of both Trimin and Record Ease. Trimin's the stuff we're currently using, is this recording software. Both products need to convert our existing images to their system. We received proposals from both Trimin and Record Ease and include all the software components we need, the image filing service, converting the images, and training. Both companies assure they can complete this transition this year, and actually due to the high loan interest rates in the market, the number of documents recorded has slowed down a bit, and it'd be a good time to do the conversion. So with that, the staff, it also gives us time to do our training and stuff during that time. We currently pay for the annual maintenance fees for Trimin from the Recorder's Fund, and any new improvements or modules could be paid from our technology or the compliance funds. These funds, again, are not levy dollars. They're all generated from the recorded document fees that we get. Our current recorded document fees are kind of split into, some of it goes to the state, some of it goes to the county operating budget, and then some of it goes into these two technology and compliance funds. So it's those technology and compliance funds that we've been paying the software from and new modules. So looking at what we have in those funds, we feel that we can do that, pay from those new things out of the recorder's funds, not levy dollars. Looking at all the technology and the options and how we can continue to record documents and stuff, we, as staff, we looked at it and we thought that the Record Ease would be our best option. The second page of the report, I kind of lay out all the finances on that. Traditionally, Trimin has been charging us an additional 5% every year for our annual maintenance. So just kind of making some assumptions there. Currently, if we stayed with the exact same system that we have, the Trimin and that separate imaging software, this year we would be paying $52,572. The quote that we got from Record Ease, we kind of negotiated a little bit. So we would be paying, what they proposed was the $100,000 for all the software and the conversion of the files. They've given us a quote that said we could split that over 2 years, so we would pay half of it. Actually, we would pay 25% on signing the contract, $25,000. We'd paying $25,000 on once they go live, and then the remaining $50,000 they let us go until February next year. And that's also when they decided, or we negotiated, that we wouldn't start maintenance fees until February of next year. We've budgeted that out in the two recorder and technology funds. We do have the funds for that. And again, those, especially the technology funds, is set up so it's not to replace the operating budget of the recorder's office, but it's supposed to be used to help the office keep their technology up to date. As a reminder, we do the electronic recording on some of the documents. We have 3 days to record those based on the statute. So we feel that this is a good fit, it's a good use of those funds, and we would be looking for the board to approve letting the county recorder's office go ahead with the record ease and sign the contract with WCI, which is the company that has that software. We also did look around, all the counties around us use that same software, and we went and we visited with some of the people. We visited with one of our previous county employees that went down to Wabasha, so she had good knowledge of what we currently use in the new software where they're using down there, and everybody seems to be very pleased with the conversion. We've talked to other counties on how they did a conversion, and they were pleased with that. So we feel in the long run, the use of the software and the cost of it, we feel it's best if we go to that record ease with WCI. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from board members? Thank you for doing all that research. Very appreciated. Do I have a motion?
Motion to go ahead with the new contract.
Second?
Motion and a seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks again. Human Resource Managers Report.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Personnel Committee heard 5 different reports this morning, 4 of which come to this board, 1 which will go to the Health and Human Services Board. The first report was job evaluations, and DDA provided recommendations for specific jobs, and those recommendations pertain to the other report, so I'm going to skip to the second report and talk about that, the Property Tax and Elections Manager, so I'll give Lucas a chance if he wants to come up here. So one of the jobs that DDA reviewed and evaluated was the proposed Property Tax and Elections Manager position. They provided a grade recommendation of 113 for that position, and it would be a salaried exempt position as a manager.
Good morning.
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 So this request has been quite a long time coming, as I noted in the Personnel Committee. This request initially was brought forward in 2020 through my predecessor, Brian Anderson. He presented to the board multiple times during 2020 and then also in 2021 regarding the succession planning and the need for this Property Tax and Elections Manager. Ultimately, it was approved by Personnel Committee and the board on April 6, 2021. Beyond that, the position actually was never hired. It didn't move beyond that because our accountant ones at that time under the old pay scale were a grade 82. Our accountant twos were a grade 83, and this job was rated as an 84. So as an exempt position, it's not eligible for overtime. Any of our accountants that have taken this position would have actually gone backwards in pay considering the loss of overtime wages. So at that point, it was kind of dead in the water based off the way the old pay scale was structured. Beyond that, this position has been discussed more recently when Brian had announced his resignation. There was multiple conversations with the, at that time, board chair and vice chair discussing the overall structure of the department, any potential new positions, where we would like to go with that department moving forward, as well as, I believe we also discussed it during my application interview process for my current position as finance director. And at that time, it was in 2024, so it was with the 2024 board chair and vice chair. Benefits of this, creating this position would be to aid in employee retention by creating a second career ladder. Currently, all of our employees are supervised by the finance controller. This gives accountants an opportunity to choose, do you really want to specialize in more of financial reporting and accounting side of things and potentially attain the position of finance controller? Or do you want to focus more on property tax and elections and get really good at that and potentially attain this position as well? So it gives us more opportunities for what people want to actually be involved in and specialize in. Aside from that, I'll also note, I did include in the report a chart kind of estimating what potential costs for this position would be. I will note, obviously, this position was not budgeted in 2024. However, due to the vacancy in the finance director position for a couple weeks, as well as the controller position for 7 weeks, there's more than enough budgetary savings to cover this increase in costs in 2024. Moving forward, I have the table on there showing, and this is just for illustrative purposes, what potential maximum costs could be. Grade 111, that's our current accountant 2 position. So if they're at a step 12 and they work 160 hours of overtime, which is a realistic number for an election year, their maximum salary would be approximately $109,945. The grade 113, step 12, as an exempt position, not eligible for overtime, annual salary would be about $113,000. So we're only looking at about a $3,000 increase in an election year if this is approved. Obviously, in a non-election year, there isn't that overtime, so that increase is different. To help offset those increasing costs, I did note that we have a new funding source called the voter funds. This was initially approved as part of the 2023 legislature. In 2023, we received our first payment of approximately $11,662. And I will note that in the AMC update that they sent just the other day, I believe I read in there that the state did decide to double their amount of funding going into the voter fund. The amount of money that we received is according to a formula, so I can't say for a certain fact that the amount of money that we will receive going forward will double. However, we know that it most likely will be going up. With that, I'm available to answer any questions as needed.
Any board members have questions?
Are you going to refer back to the report from DDA suggesting that that's not necessarily how to go, the separating them?
That's a different spot,
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
management.
I'll wait.
Just one question that I would have. I think the finance controller is currently supervising 5 people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And they'll be supervising 2 people if this occurs?
That's correct.
Okay. And does that impact how that position is graded, or does it not? And if not, why not?
So we did speak to our compensation consultant about that question. The number of direct reports doesn't always impact the grading of the position, and for the finance controller and this proposed property tax and elections manager position, the scope of their work justifies the grade of the position. So for the finance controller position, the fact that they are responsible for an $80 million budget justifies the grading of that position. Similarly, the property tax and election manager position is responsible for carrying out state mandated functions and all the complexity that goes along with that, and that also justifies the grade of that position.
Move approval to move forward with this position.
I will second that motion. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll move from there onto the land use management report. So April 16th, we brought 6 options before the board to consider for the land use management in light of Ms. Haney's departure. And so at that meeting, the board had moved for us to explore option 5 and have DDA review the proposed position descriptions for a revised land use management director position and a county surveyor recorder position. Ms. Haney's report also included recommendations to look at a GIS manager and a sanitarian, both as manager positions, and so that was also sent to DDA for review as well. When DDA reviewed those positions, their recommendation was to review the org structure. What they're seeing as a tendency is organizations moving towards consolidating functions, as we've done with our land use management. And so the concern there was that if by dividing an existing department into two, that perhaps we're regressing. And so that's what the Personnel Committee considered this morning, was whether or not to proceed with option 5 as presented, and the cost was included in that report, or to consider doing maybe more of a study of operations.
So,
Any comments from the board to start with, or Ms. Hanny, please? Yes. Okay.
okay, so option 5 was to separate the two departments, and based on the approved minutes at the time, which you changed this morning, it was to separate them into two departments: survey, GIS, and recorder, and land use management. The two manager positions was added as additional discussion for you to consider at a later date. As I hear the board say that if you're looking at positions, do it during the budget process. And my report to you back in April 16th was to kind of give you an idea of what's coming up next with the department as a whole. So the two manager positions are something that you can do if you would like to do that, consider that later this fall and have it budgeted for 2025. And as far as the building inspector, again, that was, again, if the board chooses to add on another municipality for building inspection services, they would need to consider getting another building official, or excuse me, building inspector. So option 5 was just to separate the two departments. I strongly disagree with DDA's assessment that we would be going backwards. We have basically 6 departments that's under one person, and as the land use director, county surveyor, county recorder, I was working in each one of those departments. I did a lot of the surveying, did a lot of the recording background information, and did a lot of the land use stuff, depending on what was going on in land use at the year. My concern is that if you don't hire, if you want to replace me exactly, you need to hire a Minnesota licensed surveyor to do that. And if today you just appointed somebody to be in the interim, we only have 1.5 surveyors in our office, and that's not including half the time that I do. So I basically took care of all the inside work, and the 2 field people took care of all the outside work, and they worked with me jointly on a lot of different things. We do have a contract with Dodge County to provide county surveyor services, so half of one of the employees is paid through their salary and benefits, and I think $9,000 a year is paid through Dodge County, in which case we do the parcel mapping and we do all the survey work down there under my review. And so we've got a lot of different agreements with other counties to do services for them. We also do the GIS services for Dodge County, which works well because we do all the parcel mapping through the survey office for Dodge County. So regardless of what happens, if Mr. Ekblad is a successful candidate to become the county surveyor on a permanent basis, his position needs to be backfilled, because otherwise we won't have any time to do any of the public works stuff. If Mr. Ekblad is not the successful candidate, you'll need to hire a county surveyor to do the work. So I think regardless, you're looking at hiring one person for surveying, depending on what happens here. But as you see, a lot of counties have a lot of different mixes, and usually, if you go back and look at their history, it's based on who was there and who's willing to take on the duties. Goodhue County is unique in that we've got all of those in one position. And I wouldn't suggest having one person do all that again, because, again, mine was a working position. If you hired a manager that wasn't a surveyor, then they won't be participating in any of the work that's included in being a surveyor. So with that, and as I say, the looking at what was approved, and again, you've changed that today, everybody was under that understanding. I don't believe we need to spend consultant money to go around and ask everybody what they think about the split in the department. They've all been aware of it. We brought it to management team. There was no managers that had any issues with that split. There would be a cost savings for some part of that because I'm up at step 12. These other two positions right now are ranked a number of steps below me. They will not be at step 12. And then if we replace a position in the surveyor office, again, it won't be at step 12. So overall, long-term, I think those two department heads can focus on things that we didn't have time to focus on. We could spend more time working with Public Works on doing some of their monumenting the right-of-way. The other side, we can actually go out and look for grants and manage grants, which we've had one grant since I've been here as land use manager because we just haven't had time to go look and manage grants. So I still think it's a good, I don't believe we're stepping back. I think that, you know, I don't know if there's any county that had 6 departments under them. So I think it's a good split, and I'd really like the board to consider continuing on with that recommendation. And if you have any questions.
Well,
Questions?
Yeah, thank you. I think Jessica sent me some information on, I think it was 10 different counties, but maybe Goodhue County was included in that 10. And there wasn't any that had all 6 of those. They had them divided up in many different ways. And so I think one of the questions would be, is the split you're proposing the best way to divide it up, or should there be a number of ways we would consider splitting that? So that would be one question I have. And the second question is, just so I'm clear in understanding, I think you're saying that if you leave, or you are leaving, and when you leave, if the person who's hired is not a surveyor, there will be need to hire more surveying time, no matter what. That's what I'm hearing. And I believe right now there's 1.5 time surveyor plus that basically half time you put in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So as far as the split, physically we've been located the way we currently have suggested. The survey and GIS and recorder work together on a daily basis. The surveyor provides things for the GIS, and, you know, we use the recorder's office on a constant basis with the documents. So that makes the most sense. That's the way the budgets are kind of structured also. As far as the land use, every permit that comes in needs to go through those departments, the sanitarian or the environmental health, the well and septic, the building, and the zoning. So those already are a good, solid fit together. When I first came, they were separated, and it was just like anything else, just like the recording software. If there was an issue, everybody was going, it's their fault. Having them in one group is beneficial because the communication is right there. They just go down the hall and talk to each other, and they're all aware of what's going on. So I think the split for Goodhue County, this is the best split that we can offer and continue to provide to our citizens. Since we moved and had environmental health move in with zoning and or planning and building, we've had comments from commissioners and from the public saying it's really nice because they're all right here. You know, we'll say, oh, you got to have your septic checked. Just a minute, let me go get the staff for that. So that's worked really well. We've had a lot of compliments on how well that's worked together. So personally, I think it's the best fit. It's kind of what we've been doing forever. So it's not a surprise to anybody. I had conversations with people before we came through with this, and I just still think it's the best fit. I think that its overall cost savings will be there because of the unity that we have. And kind of just as a reminder too, I made a lot of deals, let's say, over the years with different municipalities. We have a lot of contracts out there. Survey and GIS, we contract with Dodge County, City of Red Wing. They pay half salary and benefits for those staff. And also on the building side, we have all the townships in 5 cities that we currently run the building code services through. So having somebody come in that's not familiar with what we've done, that will not be able to sit down and actually produce something, I think would be a step backwards. I think that having the knowledge that we have in the departments with the 2 people that are temporarily in charge will be the best continuity for the county.
I have one more question. Other than the expense of hiring an outside consultant and the time it would take to go through that process, do you see other disadvantages other than the time and the money?
I think it would be, clearly, the county is in a process of doing, employee retention and recruitment. Since I've been here for 25 years, I've tried to work with my staff all along the way, get them licensed, get them certified, to get them credentialed, so that if there was ever an opportunity in the county that came up, they would be ready to step in if they so chose, and if they were interested in applying. And I think, based on what was said and what we thought was approved, I think the staff is kind of looking forward to that, to moving on with that, and basically not wasting time and money on a consultant, asking them, what do you think, where do you think you should sit? Do you think you should be part of another department? We've had those discussions internally, and again, we've talked about it, management team, and there's no managers that thought it would be different.
There's no what?
There was no managers that thought it should be different.
Thank you.
Any comments, Scott?
Sure. So basically, you had 6 options laid out in front of you, and the direction from the board last time was obviously get option 5 evaluated and costed out. I will note that the HR's math is different than cost savings. It's actually an additional cost. So that should be noted. But from the board standpoint, I think it's important that you want to choose the structure that you want for the future. So I mean, this over the last 25 years, we've kind of morphed into the structure we're at, and it works. And as Lisa put a lot of thought into the separation of the 2 departments, that's definitely one option that's very viable, and it's the one that you had costed out. You also, you could try to replace it as it's structured. You probably, to increase your number of candidates, would need to remove the licensed surveyor requirement in the job, because you'll get way more applications that way. So I would say that's another good option. And I don't think there's any harm in actually looking at how we do things. And, this is kind of what the board actually encourages us to do, is to look at how we do things when people leave. We just got done doing this in court services. Yes, took a month and a half or whatever, but in the end, we're confident that the structure we had was what we wanted. So
Was an external consultant involved in that or not?
that was internal, but we did survey other counties externally. And you could do this one either way as well. There's so many different structures out there, which Lisa could tell you about, that you're not going to, because I know one of your questions was, who's got this exact same structure? I don't know who's got this exact same structure. Can we find other ones that have 6 things together? Yeah, we can find some that have 10. But, and those are kind of some of the things you'd find out through a study. The other things I think through a study is you'd probably have more, discussions with people like Public Works and Finance to find out more things about, are there other structures or other things that we can do differently to have a better structure? Or maybe we have the best structure, I don't know. But those are some of the things you'd find out by doing this, taking the time and doing the study. So, like I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with this structure that was proposed. I think there's a ton of thought put into it. It does cost more money, and like I say, we could try test the market. If I was going to test it as is with the current structure, I would pull that licensed surveyor piece out of that job description, and you also have the acting duties of the county administrator that would be pulled out. And then your third option again is to take a little pause and study, and I don't think there's a harm in that option either.
But with pulling the surveyor requirement out, that creates some additional expense, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yep,
It's going to either way.
you're going to need to have another surveyor regardless. So, and I guess, like I say, just the overall, the staff know it, we physically moved each other together to cover what we're doing, and that's been working well. And I think, I still think it's the best option, and I don't think that we should be spending money on a consultant to ask everybody where they think they should sit.
Yeah.
Brad, a comment?
nine years ago when I started here, 9.5 years ago when I started here, I knew that we had put a whole bunch of stuff together, and peeling that onion was going to cost more money. It just was. So I understand. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought if Lisa retired, that we would replace that with the same dollars. No way. I mean, either you're going to have to put more middle management underneath it to have that there, or because nobody's going to have all those skills that Lisa has to put together for managing those departments. And I said it in personnel. Lisa can write a report for any of those 6 departments because she knows them backwards and forwards, and that's really impossible to replace. So while I moved the motion to look at this, I think we'll end up in this place. I think we'll end up with 2 departments. I think some of us just want a little more time to look at it. I'm fine with going forward with it, but I think others might have more questions about that. And no matter who you hire, whether it's internal, external, there still may be more positions that need to happen underneath it. And some may want a clearer picture of that.
Well, I agree with you, Brad. I mean, people would comment to me that it'll take 3 people to replace Lisa, and I'm not sure if that's accurate, but that was something that I've heard more than once. And I, too, believe that we aren't going to end up in a better spot than what's Lisa's suggesting. So I would be okay as well with going forward with that. But if the other 3 want to do more study, okay, then that's what we'll do.
Well, it's very clear that trying to replace Lisa is the most difficult issue. Would it be more beneficial to the department if the surveyor part was removed from the director and you had, the office had 1 more full-time surveyor?
Let me just clarify that. What I'm talking about is removing the minimum requirement. The minimum requirements include the licensed surveyor in that job description, and that's the piece that not everybody's going to have.
Right.
But like Lisa mentioned, that if that person isn't, depending on how that position's filled, you may or may not have to still hire another surveyor for the workload piece of it. But it's just the minimum requirement that you'd be removing, and that would give you a lot more candidates, a lot more.
Right, but then either that person has to become a surveyor or we have to also have a surveyor.
True.
Another surveyor.
Yes.
And would it be better off for the department if there were another separate surveyor, rather than the director being all?
So right now, my current description includes it as a required surveyor. That's what Mr. Arneson's saying. The 2 that I provided for DDA was to separate out, so you have the county surveyor also as the county recorder and also in charge of the GIS as a department head. And then land use would be a department head that would have the zoning, building, and environmental health together. So you'd have the 2 department heads. If you get somebody, if you take my current description and take out the county surveyor requirement, I would say your chances are pretty slim you're going to get a county surveyor or a licensed surveyor to apply for it, which means that whole other section is really not going to have any working person to help them in the survey GIS world, okay? So regardless of what happens, you need to fill a surveyor position, whether it's the county surveyor or a surveyor backfilling what we have. So you're going to need to do that, otherwise we will not have any time for Jess's work. So the suggestion is to split them out, have 2 department heads, and they can focus on their own areas instead of having one person try to focus on 6 areas and only really being qualified to do maybe 3 of them.
In some ways, that's what the finance department was asking for, is people to be able to focus on their areas.
Correct. Yeah, so you just kind of approve that in the finance department, that kind of a split.
questions? Jason?
I support separating departments just like we did. I'm assuming over the course of time that we've gotten to this position that they presented it to us and you've kind of worked together how they're separated land use recorder because, like you said, they worked best. And if we had management meeting over the course of years and said, well, we should move this department here because it fits better, we would have done that. We haven't. Makes sense to separate them. Biggest question mark I have is that, I hate to assume or say, but I'm assuming that all of your staff and everything, Lisa calls in sick tomorrow, is fully able to function throughout the day without you being there 8 o'clock. Well, this is what you're doing to the day. This is what you're gonna do the whole day. They're fully functional on their own. I question moving it in and giving department head status. Maybe that's based on the pay and their managerial direction that they have to have under some of the departments, I guess is a question I have, which is based on pay and everything else like that. I just don't, there's some heavier, which is the questions I asked Jessica about what are we asking the job duties of a department head compared to just a supervisor or manager? And that's the only question I don't know is if, if it makes sense to me to say, well, land use should be separated and have a specific department head, putting extra job duties onto them from a department head standpoint that they're maybe not necessarily, I don't want to say qualified for, but that they're better suited to just stay managing their position in the office and their people as opposed to dealing with budgeting and aspects like that.
Okay, so.
That was
Yeah, so.
direction I looked at, so.
So on land use, I have 2 supervisors. One in building and one in planning. Environmental health does not have I was the supervisor.
Yep,
So there was not one, I was the glue on that.
right.
And then on the survey side, I have 2 supervisors, one deputy recorder and one county deputy surveyor. And then that one, and GIS had no supervisors, that was me. So I was the one that supervised both sections. And as a department head, you know, again, I was ranked differently. I think I'm at 121 or something. Both of these are coming in at 117. So they're both lower than what I'm currently at. I'm at step 12. They will clearly not be at step 12 when they come in. So I think what you need is the glue, the one person who's ultimately responsible for that department, instead of just having supervisors kind of do their own thing, because then again, having one department head ultimately being responsible, that's where the buck stops.
Well, I get that, and you're going to call them as a department head. I'm just looking at saying that our department head classification evolves to more than just managing these people, correct? I mean, most situations, the department head is going to be at management team meetings, in charge of the budget, you know, looking into the future and all this other stuff. And so at this particular, so you identified Sam as the intern supervisor in land use. So right now, she is technically the glue that is going to be the building inspections, the sanitarian, land use. She is responsible to keep them in line, what they're doing and what, so, right. So technically, she would be in the department. I'm just saying, in my outlook on it, does it need to have a department head classification onto that position where we're throwing more? I would like to see her stay focused on the land use issues as opposed to, what would you say? Getting into deeper, and like I said, I think my personal opinion, we want to move this way, more discussion down the road, depending what the rest of the board is, but that would be more of a discussion I have to keep the things rolling, but of what the requirements are of her in a department head status, focus on your work, do it.
Again, the department head goes to the management team, they're part of that group. They also kind of set the tone for what the department as a whole is going to be doing. Years ago, there was like a financial benefit to be a department head because we used to get family pay or family insurance. We don't have that anymore, so they are slightly higher in the ranking as far as the job classification, but really they're the ones that are responsible for doing the budget, for doing all the contracts, for keeping the departments working together. So there is that additional leadership responsibility as a department head versus a supervisor. If you just put supervisors in each one of those, they're kind of just dealing with their own people, you know, but as a department head, they make sure that everything within its department works together.
Right.
And I understand kind of where you're going, Jason, with not having those be directors. But if they were just managers, then they would ultimately probably have to report to Scott.
Correct.
That would be the direct report. And then, yeah, and I don't know, is that, you already have HR reporting there, so I don't know if that's the right method to go either. I was
Sure.
looking back at that org chart that you put together when you proposed this, and I think all of us probably need to go back and look at that and just study that a little bit more to understand where we're coming from and where this takes us to and how that all fits. I really think we need to go back and probably spend more time looking at that.
And I think part of that, as you were saying, is if they're all supervisors, then they need to report to somebody else. The nice thing of having them as a department head is they're working with those people. They can actually, give them their job review. They know what they're doing. Scott, there's no way he can know what everybody's doing in this county. There's just no way. So that's why it keeps it focused. The surveyor will know what the survey, GIS, and the recorder does because they're working with them every day. And they work with those staff and know how to do their reviews. Same thing with land use, and that's why to me, it makes more sense to have them as a department head than just as a supervisor. It gives them a little bit more, again, succession planning or something to look forward to when they work here for a number of years and they would have an opportunity to move up. Not to say they would get it, but they'd have that opportunity to do that. I just think it's better as their department head. And like I say, there's really not a lot of advantage in being department head financially anymore because the amount of hours I put in, I probably make less than a lot of my staff.
Scott, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, regardless of what option you pick, somebody needs to be the department head. This is a very, very big portion of our operations and very important portion. I will say with Jason's comments about who's a supervisor, who's a department head, I mean, those are part of the things that you can wash out if you do want to do a study. So, I mean, and again, I don't think there's harm in looking at things. You'll probably feel better about your decision later if you do.
Yep, and that's where I'd like to be, is I'd like to take a little more time to look at it.
I'm sorry.
Say I'd like to take a little more time to look at it.
I would concur with that.
Something internally,
Yes.
and then bring a report back to the next meeting?
We can work on it. I'm not going to guarantee the next meeting, because like with court services, we physically talk to every single employee. And when we talk to the other divisions in the county that also do work with them. So I'll guarantee it won't be at the next meeting. But yeah, we can do that internally.
That would be my recommendation.
You need a motion for that or just consensus?
If that's consensus, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, next is our,
All right, so the next item from the personnel agenda was a proposed night corporal position, and I will let Marty talk about that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you. We had an extensive discussion this morning on this at Personnel Committee, and I think it was received fairly well. We are looking to have a little bit more supervision on our night shift only, 2 positions. For when our supervisors are gone, we've done the math with trainings and comp, sick, vacation. Our sergeants are gone roughly 300 hours a year. That in itself, when they're gone, then we pay a senior officer to be in charge. And that's worked. Last year in 2023, we paid $58,000 in senior officer pay, and we're on track to pay $63,000 in 2024 if this proceeds. But my proposal would be to hire and promote 2 corporals at a 113 grade, 1 step higher than the patrol, at a very minimal cost to the county, $5,400 at the best, which would save the county I'll say 40,000 is a conservative number that we would save, and we'd be getting accountability a little more on our shift. And by the way, our demographic now has changed dramatically since I became sheriff, with just the age and the experience of some of our staff, particularly on nights. We might have a 13-month deputy supervising people that have been in law enforcement for 17 years. And they may or may not be able to do that, but it's quite awkward and sometimes not, they don't want to do it. There are times that happens too. So we want to have somebody in there that wants to do it, that we feel capable of doing it. And it's just a benefit for the county in general, succession planning and the whole works. I could go on and on about the benefits. But I think I'll just leave it up to the board for their decision, and we'll move forward.
Any questions from the board for Sheriff Kelly?
We talked about this in personnel, and it makes sense to us to have that in place and just make that separation and save the dollars, so I'd move this forward.
We have a motion. I have a second.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and as I mentioned, the fifth report will go to the Health and Human Services Board, but just circling back to the DDA report, it included some of the ones that we've talked about. It also included a review of an ADC program coordinator, review of the school resource officer, review of the Parks and Trails manager, special projects coordinator title to be determined for that position as well. And so just as a FYI for the board, that the report included those as well.
All right, thank you.
Just a question, do we need to approve the ranking of those, or is that,
I think
I think we have
we
historically.
have in the past.
we have?
Yeah.
Was there, do we need to
I would
pick certain
do-
ones out, or just approve?
Do that without the land use management one, though, because I think you need to determine what structure we're going with before you want to approve
So
those.
I'd approve the rankings we have without the land use management stuff down through sanitarian?
Correct.
So the Parks and Trails, tax selection manager, school resource officer, corporal, and ADC program coordinator.
We have a motion on the floor.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Catching that, Brad. Finance Director's Report, ARPA, update. When did ARPA start?
It's been a while.
21, 22? Wow. 21?
Yeah. So here, I'm going to be discussing the ARPA program. It's been quite a while since we brought this back to the board for an update. It was actually back on July 18th, 2023, so it's been quite a while. So we have multiple updates to discuss. The first one is we'll be digging into the broadband-specific allocated funds. So last time this was discussed was back on November 21st, 2023. At that board meeting, the board decided to allocate, they voted and allocated $277,733 to the Nuvera project, which covered portions of Bell Creek, Cannon Falls, Leon, and Vesa townships. At that time, the board decided to leave behind a balance of $201,255. With the understanding, we had heard that HBC was going to be working on an application for an Upper Wakuta project. So we decided to leave some money behind in the event that they did move forward with that and were approved by the state. Since then, we have found out back on the 14th that that project was not approved by deed. Therefore, we have that money still set aside. Additionally, I have included in the report here an update of all of the approved projects for broadband-specific items. You'll note that 2 of them came in under budget as compared to what was initially allocated, the first of which is the Nuvera Vesa project that came in $51,000 under budget. And then there was the Goodhue County RFP, which was initially allocated $60,000. The contract that we signed with them was for $48,000. So between the 2 of those, we also have an additional $63,000 that we can reallocate totaling to $264,332. So at this time, I'll just take a pause, and if there's any questions to address the broadband-specific item, we can go ahead and do that at this time, if there are any questions.
Question. Is there any reason we would pull those dollars out of broadband and not just leave them there? Do we have to use them by a certain time? Or are we okay to leave them there until the next project comes along that we can help fund?
So for the purpose, for the reporting purposes with the Treasury Department, we have reported the expenditure of all of the ARPA dollars through employee wages. That being said, we don't want to sit and hold off on spending this money if we don't need to. My opinion is we have the funds available. This wasn't levy dollars. If the board wishes to continue to support broadband projects, then it would make sense to continue supporting those. One item to note is that the whole purpose of the ARPA project, the ARPA funds, was that we cannot use that money to reduce levy expenditures going forward. So I just want to make that clear. You know, we can't use this, set this aside for the budget process next year and say we're going to reduce our levy with this. That was explicit in the federal guidance. So we do have some money set aside here if the board wishes to reallocate to additional projects going forward. But I can move on to the next portion of the memo if there's no further questions at this time.
Good.
Okay. So that being said, there were several other updates on all the other different projects that we had. Some of those projects came in over budget. Quite a bit of them actually came in under budget. So I've got a table there on the second page itemizing those specific changes from the previous report. You can see the legal secretary position. That one came in $57,000 under budget. Then we have some capital items. The master control and dispatch AC replacement was a little under budget. Boiler plant was over budget, et cetera. One item on here, the biggest item, the outreach and communication specialist. This one came in quite a bit under budget. There's two main reasons there. The first of which was the initial amount that was allocated to this position was probably a little high, combined with the 2024 salary for this position is half funded by ARPA and it's half funded by levy dollars. So that's where there's an additional portion of remaining ARPA funds, I guess, made up from that. The next item on there, the government center entrance assistant, this is simply projecting out through the end of the year what we would have as a remaining balance. And I know there's been multiple discussions surrounding does the county need to have a full-time employee down there or not? You know, I guess that's a separate discussion, but this money is specifically related to the non-county employee that's sitting down at the front door checking people in. And then the last item on there is the intervention crisis mental health worker. That one is the HHS employee that is paid for by ARPA funds. There was turnover with the person that was initially in that role. They replaced it with a separate current employee of HHS department that was at a higher step. So that's why there's a little bit of over budget there. At the end of the day, with all of these changes, we have a net increase of available funds about $196,000. The previously reported contingency fund balance was $231,000, which brings our total contingency balance up to $427,000. The next item on here, I just want to note that there is a report after this one requesting to spend ARPA money on the upgrades for the HR area as well as room 308. If the board approves that project, spending the difference on using ARPA money, the remaining balance that we would have available in contingency funds would drop down to approximately $210,000. So at the end of the day, we still would have quite a bit of money left over, which could be reallocated to other items, such as broadband, if the board so wishes, or something else in the future.
Well, I have a question on these salaries, or like the outreach and communication specialist. What do we do next year? Does that just come all under levy dollars then? Or is this continuing with ARPA?
So for 2024, it's half funded by ARPA dollars and it's half funded by levy dollars.
What about 25?
So it was approved most recently through 2024 to be funded half through ARPA dollars. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed through the budget process.
In the preliminary 24-25 budget, the 25 salary is all in levy.
And
Both
same,
positions. Kept both positions, it would be all.
and the intervention crisis mental health worker also?
In that one, through the HHS reorganization, that one was taken care of for 2025. That was part of that process. They would switch into one of those positions that was created. So that would no longer need to be funded with ARPA money or levy dollars, I guess. That was part of that overall reorganization.
And the legal secretary position is?
That was funded by levy dollars in 2024. That one actually ended in 2023 using ARPA money.
Questions?
So this time, I've got two requests from the board. The first of which is to approve the changes to the ARPA budget as presented. And then the second of which is simply to give staff some direction regarding broadband. Do you want the staff to reach out to broadband providers and look for additional projects with that available $264,000, or do you have something else in mind?
Go ahead, Linda.
Well, I've always been a very strong supporter of broadband. I think that it makes a huge difference for everyone in the county. So I definitely support, perhaps not all, but a vast sum of the money to be kept for broadband. I know there is a large amount of money coming from the state for broadband to Minnesota. But I also think that we're left in the county with the most difficult areas to try and reach, and those are the areas that are going to be the most expensive, which of course is why nobody's done it so far. But it's also the areas that literally have none or very, very limited broadband.
Are you saying leave the 264,000 in there?
I am.
Okay.
I would concur with Linda, and I did put a call into John Smith, and he was going to track down why the HBC proposal was not awarded. And I think maybe that's the first grant they applied for, so it could be something relatively simple.
So I would also like to see us reaching out to the broadband providers and seeing if we can't drum up more interest.
Had a spring meeting?
I'm sorry?
Usually they have one in the spring, a meeting with providers. Have they had that yet?
Yeah, spring or summer. Usually we wait and find out try to get what the legislature did. I will say, just yesterday, John and I had a meeting with a provider that has some potential projects in, three of the commissioner districts, but northern and western side of the county. But that would be through the BEAD process, which I believe will have a September, October timeframe. There's a map challenge process that'll start in the beginning of summer, and it's like, I think you have 30 days to put your map out there, and then people have 30 days to challenge your map, saying whether or not they're a provider in your area, that type of thing. So, but anyways, I would think, once we know a little bit more from the legislature, we can have the broadband meeting this summer, and then timing-wise, for us to go out with some type of matching grant would be sometime this fall.
Was that a direction? You need a vote on that? Do you need?
Well, you were asking for two things. One about the broadband dollars, leaving them in, and the second was the contingency or the updated contingency fund balance?
Yeah, so the first of which was just a consensus from the board regarding broadband, if we should continue to reach out to broadband providers. It seems as though we have consensus on that. And then the second of which would be a motion regarding the approval of the updated budget and the contingency fund balance.
I would move that we approve the updated budget and that we leave the dollars in broadband that are allocated, that we have there currently, the 264.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That
Thank you,
takes
sir.
care of both of them?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Where do we go next?
The next report will be handled by Stacy and Lucas and Tim, so
And Briggs if we need him.
there we go.
Team effort. So this is the board report that was titled the Government Center Master Plan Implementation of Phase 2. I apologize if that title has given any confusion because it does not exactly tie to what the Phase 2 is in the overall TSP space study, which was the build-out of the front of the building, changing the way things were in the lower level. This should have been rephrased into the internal Phase 2, implementation of internal Phase 2. So I'll just walk you through everything here. So what we're asking to proceed with is implementation of pieces of the building security assessment that was conducted by the Department of Homeland Security in early 2022. We did make some changes to the Government Center in 2023 where we moved the Veterans Office extension to the lower level. We took the land use management offices, some pieces of recorders, moved them to the first level. We implemented all of the security recommendations that were brought forward. And what I mean when I say that is that we're putting our staff in safer situations. So when you look at the Government Center, we have all departments other than the recorder's office, admin, HR, and I'm going to say facilities, but I know that they have a door closed. But we've implemented the recommendations of everybody being behind some type of barrier or some type of front counter that provides a barrier between staff and customers in the building. So what we are requesting to do with this implementation of our internal Phase 2 is to provide some security upgrades and modifications to space to enhance privacy and functionality in admin and HR. This also incorporates the purchase of the new furniture that was approved in June of 2022. We asked the board for $90,000 in building contingency dollars, I believe, or capital plan fund balance, one or the other. I got a capital plan fund balance in 2022 when the structure of HR changed with the 3 HR managers. We have continued to work through several plans as to how that could all look, but we actually put the brakes on, really not knowing what the best model was going to be when we're looking at 3 HR managers, 2 admin staff out in the open, and then 3 other HR. So we put the brakes on that. So we're ready to move forward with that. So this plan incorporates enhancing privacy and functionality. The request also includes some modifications to room 308, which is the old county boardroom. This will increase functionality, provide election security, and maximize the space to accommodate 75-plus individuals in training room style or table seating. And when you do the simple math, the square footage per person, we could accommodate 150 people standing or sitting in chairs alone. What our intent in room 308 is to remove everything out of there so that we bring everything to the floor level, makes everything ADA accessible, and to bring in some technology. Bring in technology that we can, I bulleted here, we could provide various elections public meetings in that room, including poll pad training for all the election judges, poll pad open houses, and all of our public accuracy testing and equipment. The technology would provide double screens that we have everything up. We have the security cameras in the room that are making sure that we can see what's going on in the room. We can also record the things that are happening in that room so that we have documentation. That room could also be used for all county staff trainings and meetings. We could start having our department head and supervisory training, some of the things that are coming down the pipe in that room. Back in January, the Veterans Service Office and the HHS conducted a veterans suicide training that was open to the public. And we had this room full of people, which worked well. We also had people online, but what didn't work well was when we were having interaction with the people in the audience, the people online couldn't hear them without running a microphone to them. So being able to provide that type of training, excuse me, with a table in front of people and microphones in the room to pick things up, we see could be beneficial. We also anticipate that HHS will be providing their staff meetings and trainings in that room with the ability to host in-person and/or technology-driven meetings with various community groups. We would also have the option to conduct county board closed sessions in that room. So we'd also be able, because we'd have the recording equipment and the sound, we'd also be able to host the workshops. Cost estimates have been obtained over the last year. We've had to revise some cost estimates because some of the estimates, including our furniture from previous, the price in 2022 to the price in '24, along with everything else, has changed. Health and Human Services is willing to contribute to this project. I outlined how we are requesting to pay for this project. As Lucas mentioned, our total cost to the project, including the furniture and admin HR, is $353,841. We take the $90,000 that's already been allocated from the capital plan fund balance. Health and Human Services is contributing $46,129.33, which they will be able to request federal reimbursement on some of that. So we are asking for the additional funding to come from the contingency of the ARPA, so the $217,711.67. So today we're requesting to move forward with that project and to allocate those ARPA dollars to proceed with that. If the board does choose to move forward, our intent, and I'll throw this at Tim, our intent is to be ready to go in room 308 so that all of those elections pieces are live for this season. So with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the board?
Certainly think we need to do what we need to do for election security. And what I think happens on the board, and I don't know if you guys would agree, is there's lots of good ideas, lots of great requests. You guys don't request things that make no sense. I think, if I understand it, there'd be a number of different ways we could use those ARPA dollars. And I believe that. I mean, I don't believe that this is the only way that they could be used. And I was thinking about the presentation this morning from the MnDOT and the consultant for MnDOT, where they sort of laid out 8 options and kind of ranked them. So I think about things like, well, what's the benefit to the public, which is certainly a high priority. And are we giving the public what they're asking? Of course, we can't always do that. We can't build a bridge perhaps over Highway 52 because the public in that area asked. But this isn't specific to this issue, but I think as a board, it would be helpful if we had a way to kind of rank requests. And by rank, I mean give points for how much the public really wants it. Like in your district, people really want something. Landfill issues. And when we get a request that's sort of an isolated request that isn't considering all the requests we might have, I feel like I'm not properly attending to some of the competing ways the money could be spent. So my concern isn't that this is a bad idea, but my concern is, are we really weighing this idea with other good ideas that would also serve the public? And are we really balancing the many requests that we might get? So I agree entirely with election security. Maybe this is the best way to do it. I don't know. Maybe there's other ways. But I'm somewhat concerned about not seeing a real plan for the room. And it really threw me off. I said that it was listed as Phase 2, so I spent time digging around. And the Phase 2 that I understood was really the new door down below. And so I'm not sure that spending $353,000 on this project is the best use of the citizens' dollars when there's other things that people need. So that's really what my concern would be.
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, and you know, I understand that, but I understand that it's also a process. If we get rid of that meeting room downstairs,
Right, I understand that.
where's this place to go? Well, okay, so then we build this meeting room that takes a replacement of that meeting room so we can do the work down there and change that. So it's kind of, I always understood it was going to be we need to do A to get to B, to get to C, to get to D, and then finally, probably at the end, is doing something outside at the end. But to do the process, and I always understood this was part of that process.
So I never,
Yeah.
maybe I just missed it, but I never
Yeah.
heard about the room until I read about it in the rest of you had.
And I think of, when we go to South Country and their meeting room, and anybody can sit in there, you don't have to have microphones and people online hear everything you say, versus what we have to do here, which is not anything like that. So the technology is there to do some of that and be more interactive for election training, whatever.
I think, if I can address we hadn't ever talked about what was going to happen in room 308. And I think that comes down to, we didn't know what we needed. And since we vacated that room as the county boardroom in October, Briggs did a quick count as to how often we've used that room. So since October 2nd of 2023 was the last time we had a board meeting in there, room 308 has held 113 events for a total of 422 hours. We've also been able to see how this room can function and what's working. So you're right, when, we didn't really have a plan for what 308 was gonna look like, we feel like we have a really good handle as to what our needs are gonna be, and as we start eliminating, as Brad mentioned, other spaces, because we're doing other things, we feel this is the best direction to go.
I do like the thought of if we had 8 things lined up that we could look at, but so much of that is timing, though.
Well, I
Okay,
understand
all of a
that,
sudden, the next one comes up
But I
6
think we
months
all
from
use
now.
our gut,
Yeah.
and it's not that our gut is
Yeah.
bad to use, but if we had some sort of way that we were giving points to things that were as objective as they could be, I think we could probably make better decisions overall for the county. And that isn't something we're going to solve today. Maybe that's a board planning meeting, but I think a process like that would help us make sort of sounder decisions that we could easily explain to the people who are saying, why'd you spend their money on X, Y, or Z?
I guess I like it that it comes out of a different fund. We don't have to raise the money for it. Now, did this reconstruction was CARES dollars and ARPA dollars? Or this is mostly CARES, this room here?
So this one is, there's $90,000 that was previously approved. This was back in 2022 using capital fund balance.
No, my question was getting this boardroom. This was CARES dollars, I think.
There was also some levy dollars attached to this. Initially, there was $150,000 worth of capital plan levy dollars for this room. And then when we started adding the different pieces of technology and as costs started increasing, there was CARES funding that we asked for additional dollars with CARES funding to finish this room.
One question. Is there a reason why the priority would be put on that room as opposed to possibly remodeling the bathrooms to make them ADA compliant for people that are on the third floor?
I'm going to defer to Tim on that one.
Well, I think, if I recall correctly, I think the ADA restrooms were like a phase 3, I think was the next phase that we were looking at. I think that was after,
They're
if I
separate
remember.
systems. That was phase 3 of the one where phase 2 was the entry.
Correct,
level.
yes,
Yeah.
I believe so. So we did not look at adding those here. I mean, we are compliant with the restrooms on the lower level. I think that is something we certainly need to move towards that, especially if we're going to have additional meetings on this level. But that was not part of this conversation. I think we identified the need for meeting space or large meeting space for all of the departments. HHS was also one of the factors. They used this room specifically for large meetings, for their all-employee meetings, which does work, but it's not ideal for rearranging furniture and setting up tables, things like that, so.
I think also the other piece of the ADA restrooms, it goes back to that domino effect. Like some of the things need to happen on second floor to get plumbing where we need to get the plumbing, to get the ADA restrooms, it's a much bigger process, and for other things to happen, like you said, that was a further down the line.
So would that be a more expensive project than the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
I believe it would, yes.
But I believe the ARPA dollars could be used for that. Is that correct, or is it,
Yeah, I believe we could use it for that, and as I said previously, if the board chooses to move forward with this project and spend that, the remaining balance on there, we would still have about $210,000 of contingency ARPA dollars.
Well, then, is the total left in ARPA dollars 1.6 million, is that correct?
That is correct. A lot of that is already tied to specific projects,
I see.
so.
Okay. And again, I'm not suggesting we do this, but I believe we could use that money towards the start of the actual Phase 2 process, or I believe we could use that money for some of the landfill questions or recycling questions in Todd's district. I believe that's true. I might not be right, but.
Yes, for reporting purposes, we've already reported to the Treasury that we've spent all of that money in compliance using employee wages. So at this point, those levy dollars that were freed up because we reported that money as employee wages, that is what we have left here at the end of the day. So we still should spend those in compliance with federal regulations. We don't want to go against any of that,
But I
obviously.
think that would
but
do it, I think.
For those projects, those certainly could work.
I was just going to follow up a little more on Linda's question. Certainly, the accessible bathrooms is super important, and we know that. It is part of a bigger project. We can start getting closer on the numbers on that. Part of when you ask why this maybe moved forward a little bit quicker is we're going to have construction going on the admin HR side regardless. And so on that side of the wall, the contractor's going to be there. And so when we found out we currently have some new election needs that we just found out about in the last 2 months, it made sense that we ask about the other side of the wall when we're going to already be working on this side of the wall. So that's part of why it got all tied together. And it actually, timing-wise, they're available and it makes sense.
Right, what are your wishes? Oh,
Move
Linda.
this project forward.
I think Linda had a question.
Motion on the floor, do we have a
discuss.
second?
I'll second it for discussion, yes, because I have another question. So your comment then, would that be then, assuming that the same person that's hired for the admin part of it would just automatically be the person that would
Yes.
move on to the other side as
Yep,
well?
we have a quote for the whole thing.
I'll just make one more comment, and
You gotta get closer to your microphone. though.
my comment is I think all along I pushed for budget items to be a part of the budget process, because then at least you can evaluate them against each other. And even though I understand this isn't levy dollars, it is part of the budget process. So in general, I feel like that prevents us from doing some of that weighing. And I guess what I wondered, and I didn't even think of this idea until this morning when the highway department was doing their thing, but I wondered about what you guys thought of trying to develop some way to kind of weigh options. And I also wondered what you felt about what should be part of the budget process, because lots of things come up that people want and need, and what we should be doing kind of as we go. So those are my two questions.
I'll just comment on that. I think a prioritization process would be great. I honestly think, given what we learned 2 months ago on what's happening out there with elections, I think this would have come to you regardless.
I understand.
So
I think in general, you're agreeing with
I totally
things
agree
being
with
part
that.
of the budget
Yep.
process.
And ideally, this whole thing would have come that way.
Yes.
Timing-wise,
And-
it's working out that it should come to you right now.
I don't know if you would have the ability to help us figure out a way to score things.
We can
or
always try.
Yeah, to prioritize things, and, all right, thank you.
Right,
Well, I
motion,
would concur that for people who are visual, that what they presented this morning was very, very beneficial, because it helped us understand whether it was a poor direction to go or a good direction to go, and that's how you could maneuver them to find out, all right, this makes the most sense.
If I could add, we are going to start moving forward. Briggs talked about the survey for the government center for people who visit, which is going to be the first piece to the puzzle, is how we talk about how long-term this building could look. So there are wheels in motion, there are plans in place to start collecting data from the people who are visiting this building as to how we start moving into the next phase, to the way the exterior of the government center looks, to the way the lower level could look. But we really need that data to drive some of that. So we have lots of decisions to make in the future.
Right. Any more discussion? Motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next one is Southeast Housing and Redevelopment Authority.
You should introduce yourself too. I don't know if the whole board knows you.
Awesome. Well, good morning, Commissioners. I am Patrick Mishner. I work in the Community Development Department at Semtra. I'm joined remotely today with Buffy, if you can see her on the TV. She unfortunately could not be here with us today. We are presenting the Housing Trust Fund and statewide affordable housing aid. We put together a request for proposal earlier this year, and we received applications, so quick presentation on that. Today we are looking for approval from you all, the board, to fund the applications that we received through this RFP process. I can advance the slides, can't I? So in February, we presented the application to you all. Our objective is to keep it simple, keep a broad definition of affordable, both rental, single family, and multifamily. And the goal was to leverage dollars coming from the state or other funding sources to maintain and preserve the affordable housing stock in Goodhue County. The application was on our website. We were the main point of contact. We partnered with Goodhue County Communications team to kind of send out a bunch of direct mailings, online media, print media, whatever sort of form we could do. We put it out there as we could. Applications were due on April 1 of this year. So once we received the applications, Semtra staff reviewed them. We brought them to the Semtra board. Semtra board reviewed and approved them. Then we brought them to the Goodhue County Housing Trust Fund Committee in early April. We had a really good conversation regarding all of them, had some follow-up questions. We had a really good discussion between all of us in that committee, looking for readiness, looking for impact, looking for diversity in the types of housing as well. And we received 6 applications. Our recommendation is to fund all 6 of those applications. They all fulfill the ordinance requirements. We have a good diversity in rehab versus new construction, for-profit, nonprofit location, funding structure, single family, and rental. In the sake of time, I'm not going to read off every single slide about each application. They are up on the screen for you briefly. We received applications from Habitat for Humanity, Bigelow Lennon, which is the for-profit entity. Us, Semtra, and Three Rivers both applied for rental rehab, preservation there, all aiming below 80% AMI. And then Cannon Falls Housing Initiative, 2 separate applications, both for single-family homes in Cannon Falls, and they have a really cool partnership with Cannon Falls High School there. And then we just have a summary matrix of all the applications there. We have enough money in the budget to fund all of these. We have a little left over as well. So I will take any questions.
Any questions for Patrick? Susan?
So I believe when I just quickly added these numbers up, it comes pretty close to $720,000. And I noticed that one of them is a loan, another is a deferred loan. But one of the things that the county was trying to do was to leverage whatever money we put in against money other people put in. And so what I wondered is if you can tell us for that $720,000 that we put in,
Yeah.
what's the county getting back from
In
that?
return?
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
So on the screen there's the percent of project budget.
Right.
So for each, the loan, construction loan for Bigelow Lennon, you'll receiving all $245,000 back. Habitat for Humanity, that's just the lot purchase. The labor of the volunteers, and they will be going after other state funding to provide gap financing for those. So it says 100% of that project budget, that's going to be building 2 houses for $40,000. Obviously, that is a lot more value than just $40,000. Semtra, we're bringing an extra around $200,000 to that table. Three Rivers is bringing 12. And then Cannon Falls is, that lot purchase again is another house, so another 400,000 or so off of 300, after 35,000. And then the land trust buy down is a little complicated, but it's only 20% of that project. So I couldn't give you an exact number.
How about a ballpark number?
I don't want to misspeak or misrepresent. Buffy, do you have any?
You're on mute.
Can we, do I have to unmute her? I could figure that out and get it back to you if you would like.
Fine. That would be just
I'd
fine.
be happy to do that.
Question, Brad.
Just a comment. This is a really, this is the first really attempt at this. And what I was really pleased about is we have a combination of rehab of rental units, building of a new construction, funding Habitat, which builds houses, funding the Cannon Falls Housing Initiative, the $35,000 for the lot purchase, and the land trust buy down, and that's a very complicated process, but what it really does is it makes that house affordable today and into the future. Because the land stays in the land trust, the only appreciation, the homeowner gets the appreciation of the building, not the land. So it always keeps that cost lower because the land is not part of it. So it's they've used it several times and it's working really well. And that's the Rochester, it's out of Rochester, the land trust.
Rochester Area Foundation,
Yeah.
First Homes.
So does that mean that the homeowner never owns the land, ever?
Correct. In perpetuity, the land stays with the land trust. But as the building appreciates, they get the advantage of that.
It can be hard to sell a house like that.
They're not hard to sell. They've built them in Cannon, they've done them in Cannon. It really, really works. They've done them in Rochester for years. It works really well.
So they can get loans.
Yeah, there's not a problem with the loan, not at all. So it works really well. The buy down is to make sure that there's enough equity in the home that they don't have to buy private mortgage insurance, which now reduces the monthly payment anywhere from $150 to $250 a month, which is a huge to get somebody in a house that's affordable. But it's to get that part.
Buffy, did you want to try again?
That's all right. You can get me a rough estimate. That'd be great.
Right, any other questions?
Well, and certainly we didn't put the money aside to leave it sitting there. I mean,
Right.
it was-
I would move that we move this forward. The one thing I will say, I think at some point between Lucas and Scott, it will come back about that construction loan, because those are really not Goodhue County Housing Trust Fund dollars. Those are SAHA dollars, which were directly given to the county, and it's county dollars that are going to do that. And however you guys figure out to do liens or whatever on that property as it's being built, I think you have to figure that out. There's no administration money for the SAHA dollars that came from the state. And so it's difficult for the HRA to operate without any revenue to cover the cost of what they're doing. So that's a piece that will probably come back if you need to do something with that. But I would move this forward and get these projects. This is what we've had the Goodhue County Housing Trust Fund for, is to get to this point, and we're here.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, any more discussion? Scott, did you have any more?
All I was going to say is, Brad's correct, at some point we'll have an agreement with liens against that property. So, and just so everybody knows, SAHA is State Affordable Housing Assistance, and it's a new set of housing dollars that we just started getting last year in their R4 housing.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Buffy. And we are on to, for your information, correct? Project status reports, county board committee reports.
I have a couple of things. I'll make it quick. From the Housing Subcommittee, there will be a housing summit this year. We're hoping for probably September, and believe it will be at the Red Wing Ignite building. Let's see, Keller Bartman, I think apartments in the Zimbrodi area, anyway, Cannon Falls, they're almost filled. None more lots were sold in Cannon Falls, and let's see, somewhere here I have that number, that's what's left. Do you have it off the top here? Oh, $66,000 is left for housing permits.
That's for the new building, new resident building permit reimbursements. Yes, about $66,000 at this time.
Thank you. And then the last thing is this morning on NPR, they passed last night, the legislature, a new law on the tax forfeiture legislation. So that will be coming down, but apparently one of them is that the house has to be put up, or the land has to be put up, sold at auction. Families have to be advised to be able to return the money to them that's extra. So at any rate, it did pass, so it's coming down the pike.
I have two quick things. The LEC meeting was very cordial. We did not reach any agreement, but we're back to, I think, having good discussions with each other, which is a big plus. And then the second thing is I'm reminding everybody I have to leave at 11:30 today because I'm giving an award to Deb Drodos for Paul Drodos for the railroad. So anybody who can make it down, the actual ceremony starts at 12:10.
New or old business? Anyone? Review and approve the county claims.
Move approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. How about adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you, everyone.